Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us once again, and I hope all of you are having a wonderful day as we get started here with the program. We have, longtime Computer America correspondent Sandy Berger. She'll be joining us in just a moment as we talk a bunch about, just one moment, folks, sorry. All right, and folks, so we're going to get started here, and thank you for joining us as we, sorry about that, as we continue on. And yeah, so Sandy Berger talking all things switching from iPhone to Android. Some of you may be doing that because, folks, I know this as well as anyone, that sometimes it's just going to be the best phone that you can get rather than your favorite phone. So, hey, some of you may be running into the same predicament of switching from one ecosystem to the next. And, it's going to be a fun conversation as we talk with her. So, folks, let's go ahead and mention a few things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything and anything for the show. Be that, let's see, the link to our guest website where you can find the bulk of her work. Be that any articles that we do, any products that we talk about. Everything will be included in the program, in the show notes right there. Also, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and be sure to check out the live video feed where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. So, folks, rough start, but why don't we just go ahead and plow through as we continue on here. And yeah, so joining us once again because, hey, I believe it's the second Wednesday of every single month. She has been very great about that. And we introduce once again Sandy Berger. Sandy, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Good to hear your voice.
Absolutely, yeah. Happy that you could join us, and of course, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff. This is, tis the season, and tis the season for lots of people to make a lot of tech decisions. And as I was just saying, one of them may have just been switching phones. And I know that, fortunately, I've yet to have to make the switch that you're making. But I know that one of our employees here, she's going from a Windows phone that finally kicked the bucket. It's like 4 years old, and she's going to be switching to an Android. So she has to deal with it. But yeah, long story short, the point is you're here to talk about switching from iPhone to Android, which doesn't happen often.
No, it really doesn't. And I am an iPhone user from day one. So it's been a long time. Um, there are a lot of reasons why I switched. One reason I kept with the iPhone is because my husband has always had an Android phone, and I've had an iPhone, and that way I could write about both very easily. But I got a deal on the Note 8 that I just couldn't pass up. So it was time for a new phone, and I decided to make the jump to Android and to see what it's all about. And not only was the deal on the Note 8 good, but when I compared the two phones, the iPhone X and the Note 8, I liked the Note 8 better.
Really, and I mean, we're going to talk about, why exactly that is because both phones, if we're being honest here, both phones have been highly rated. I mean, it's iPhone, of course, always year over year, one of the best phones, but Android and, more specifically Samsung as a company, they have put a lot of research and development in. So let's start with what you're coming from and, what exactly you liked or what drew you to the Note 8.
Okay. Um, well, I'm coming from an iPhone 7, and I had an iPhone 6 Plus. So I also had the bigger phone and the smaller. In the iPhone series, I like the smaller phone better. because it was easier to hold and a lot of other reasons. But what really drew me to the Note 8 was actually the stylus, which it now the stylus has been around since the original Note, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But they've done some improvements that make it extremely useful and very easy to use. And then a lot of little things after that. The size of the phone. The Note 8, if you put it right next to the iPhone X or iPhone 8, you'll see that it's taller and maybe about the same width, but taller.
Hmm.
And I find it actually much easier to hold on to, more screen size. Um, and on top of that, it's just a beautiful phone. I mean, the way the edges go. The iPhone X looks like the iPhone 7, to be honest with you. It looks like every previous iPhone. And the 8 is just more elegant and just a beautiful, beautiful phone.
Yeah, that was one, and before we jump into Samsung, but that was one critique of the iPhone 8, not the 10, but the 8, that internally the hardware was essentially, really hasn't really improved much from the 7, looked very similar. It was essentially the same phone with a few extra perks. And the iPhone 10, while it claimed that it was advanced in a lot of ways, to be honest, we were talking about, I think it was last month, that it was really playing catch up in a lot of regards to what Samsung had been doing for quite a while. So I see why you kind of went this way. But, obviously, I think a lot of people probably did as well. Kind of interesting that you thought the stylus was, such a big feature because personally, it may just be the wrong way of thinking, but I think stylus and I think, Palm Pilot or, older technology, what's so, kind of important about the stylus that you can't do with your finger?
Well, the idea that they've made improvements in it, and if you've looked at the big iPhone that has iPad that has the stylus, that is a fabulous stylus. And this is just a good stylus, but fabulous software behind it. So when you pull the stylus out of the phone, you immediately get a series of things that you can do with it. Very easy to choose what you want to do. You want to write notes, you want to send notes, whatever you want to do with the stylus, color, draw, do anything. I think it just comes in handy. Um, some other things is the Note 8 still has a headphone jack. In fact, it comes with headphones,
Mm-hmm.
which I found interesting. It still has the micro SD card, which I have from day one lamented not having in the iPhone
Right.
and in my iPad. My iPad is totally out of memory, okay, storage. So basically, um, this gives you the ability to add storage without adding money right at the beginning of the thing. So the iPhone X, the 256K version, I think they only have two versions, a 64 and a 256.
Yeah, something
The
like that.
256 actually costs almost $1,200, where the Note 8 is still very expensive, but it costs 950. And even if you throw in the cost of an extra micro SD card, you still come out on top. Plus, of course, the thing is that a lot of the um, companies are now having specials on the Note where they're not having very many specials on the iPhone X.
Yeah, the iPhone, they're pretty notorious for really not having any deals on their latest generation phones. So, in
Right.
fact, that was actually a funny thing where Best Buy, they were letting people buy them without contracts and they were charging $50 more for the privilege. And they actually had to stop that because, it's impossible to sell a phone for under what Apple sells it because they just don't let you. But yeah, the only way to buy a
Right.
lot of phones were with a contract as well.
That's right. Yeah. And so now contracts have pretty much gone away. And I went to AT&T, and T, and I'm an old-time Verizon user.
Mm,
So I've made a lot of changes, a lot of choices. The reason I've stuck with Verizon all this time is when I say all this time, probably the last 8 years at least. Um, I've stuck with them because I live in a not a real rural area,
Hmm.
but we have patches where the other providers didn't have coverage. Verizon was the only one that had good coverage. AT&T has finally caught up, and I can get coverage that's as good or better than Verizon in my area. And so that made me,
Yeah.
want to compare and choose and see which one I wanted to use.
So, and and just as a general phone buying tip, you're saying that carrier for your area should be one of the biggest considerations before you decide which one of these phones is carrier and what do they support.
That's right, especially if you're running a business. Now, if you're just using your phone for friends and neighbors and all that, it's not that important if you can't get through to somebody. But when you're running a business, like my husband and myself, um, you don't want people not to be able to get you because you happen to be in a small pocket that doesn't have coverage. So I think that's something that it's always important to look at in your home, in your office, the places you frequent often. But with a business, the better coverage you can get, the better off you are.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, okay, so all that out of the way, and you finally landed on the Note 8. You like the stylus, and you said the screen was good because that's, that was something that we mentioned about the Google, and Google came out with the Pixel 2 XL and the Pixel 2.
Right.
Yeah, that's the nicer of the phones that didn't have screen burn-in. Those screens were actually manufactured by Samsung, and it's I guess it's kind of an industry not so secret. Samsung makes the best screens, and it stands to reason they put those best screens on their phone. You're saying this one looks as good or better than its competitors?
I believe so. I mean, it looks as good as, I'm sure. I have not been able to get an iPhone X to do a side by side comparison.
Hmm.
But looking at one and then looking at the other, I don't see that the iPhone is any better. And the screen, the curved screen on the Note 8 makes it look better. Um, and that's just probably my opinion. Um, but
Gotcha.
it's just got so many features that the iPhone doesn't have.
And so let's talk. Let's start talking about features. We'll talk about them a little bit later, and how you actually like the phone. But let's talk about the process of switching from an iPhone to an Android phone because they kind of don't like interoperability. All of your apps have to be a new version of the app. All of your data doesn't exactly play well. How did you go about doing this, and were there any hangups?
Yes, there were hangups, and I'm still dealing with a few of the hangups. Um, and the hangups were all Apple's fault. Isn't that terrible to say? But it's true. At least for my part. Now, my husband got a new Note 8, and he upgraded his old Samsung phone. And of course, we went into the AT&T store, and they put it on the machine and everything transferred over without a problem. He had his ringtones, he had his data, he had all his apps, and everything is hunky dory. Now, when you go from an Apple phone, an iPhone, to an Android phone, you are obviously going to lose your apps. But I have an iPad, so my iPad still has any apps that I have gotten, especially a few that I have paid for that I wanted to keep. So I still have those. That's all right. Um, and installing new apps, that wasn't too hard because Android has totally caught up with Apple as far as the apps go. Just about everything that you can find on Apple, you can find on Android.
Now, yeah, and as someone who has never had the privilege of using Android, I guess we'll put it that way. I was going to say never had to, but yeah, but has never had the privilege to. As I understand it, I mean, iTunes is well known for being this, and for better or worse, higher quality, harder to get into, better vetted, things like that. And as someone coming from a place that is, can kind of be a little, tight knit. As I understand it, Android allows a lot more leniency. There's a lot more apps. There's a lot more versions of the same kind of apps. It's you have your choices, really made for you with Android. did you run into, fake apps or apps that you just didn't have before?
No, I didn't actually. I found another app for just about everything I was doing. The only thing is, and you might laugh at this, but I do some coloring, like adult coloring
Of
books,
course.
and I love to do that on the iPad. And the iPad has an app that's far superior than the apps that I found for Android. So I'm still looking for a coloring app. But other than that, all my work things just came over very easily, no problem replacing any of the apps.
Makes
Where the
perfect sense.
problems
Yeah.
came in
Hmm.
is because you don't realize when you're using an Apple, you take the iPhone and you use the first thing that's there, and the first thing that's there is something like, I'll tell you one experience is my texting. So iMessage is what I was using on the iPhone. And when I went to the Android, I found that everything that I had put in to my texting had not transferred over to my contacts.
And I'm sure you're about to get into this, but I mean, I think that people really don't kind of understand because I text people with other iPhones and I text people with Android phones. There's a very clear difference. Even when you're having that iMessage is its own service apart from like even though Apple made it seamless, it's still a different service. So that's actually very interesting. I never considered iMessage transferring to text message, and it wouldn't.
Right, exactly. And not only that, but when I had entered telephone numbers or address or contact information into the iMessage, it went into iMessage, but it didn't go into my Google messages at all, which I didn't realize until suddenly I didn't have some of my contacts in there.
I see.
And now when I started setting up my Android phone, and I added some things in the text messaging there, they immediately asked me, where do you want to put this? Do you want to put it in your Google contacts? Do you want to put it in your Samsung contacts? There were like three choices. Well, if Apple had ever given me that choice, I would have I would have picked Google because I use Google Contacts and Gmail. And um, the fact of the matter is that Apple does some things to kind of corral you into their ecosystem without telling you. And this was one of those things.
Very, yeah, that's something very interesting because you're absolutely right, and it makes sense because Android, even though they are in a lot of cases stand alone from Google, they do still, share kind of that parent company, and Android and Google still play very, very well together. Makes sense that you would like that because if you're like myself, and I'm sure many of you out there, rabid user of Gmail, calendars,
Right.
Google Hangouts, things like that. Yeah, I completely agree with you because I only use iPhone, and that's about all the iOS I have in my life. And yeah, I would totally prefer if my contacts played nicer with my other forms of communication. That's all. And you're telling me that, well, I guess looking back, but as current iPhone users, you don't think there's like a something that Google put out or something that could kind of bridge that gap, or do you think Apple just did that intentionally and really won't give you the option?
I think Apple did it intentionally. It's not that you couldn't put a different text messaging on there. It's just that, I started with Apple so long ago, I just used the one that they had on there. And I think that's what most people do.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has even caused me a problem that I haven't quite completely solved yet. Some of my contacts who are on Apple devices, they try to text me and they say, this person is not available. Okay. But
Hmm.
I am available. I transferred my number from the iPhone to the Android phone. So my number should still be there and the text should still go through. Well, after considering what's going on here, I found out that those are the people who are still using iMessage. And there's a setting in the iPhone that says use iMessage. And then a couple steps down, it says use SMS text if iMessage is not available.
Yeah.
If they turn that on, they can email to me. Okay, so I tried to get Apple to let go of my iMessage, which I probably should have done before I turned the phone in, but didn't know about this. And I went online and this and that, and they say I don't have iMessage. That number, my telephone number, does not have I is not hooked to iMessage, but it still is hooked to iMessage. Now I've read things online saying that you can call Apple and have them take you off of iMessage, but it'll cost something like $25,
What the heck?
which, yeah, which I don't want to go through. So I'm still investigating that
You
to
know,
see exactly what's going on.
yeah, I mean, the reason for iMessage out there that when they first started to make it popular was that it could do certain things, such as read receipts and what have you. They have since evolved that into using the FaceTime emoji kind of things. Like essentially, iMessage could use data more than just SMS, and so obviously they want to shovel you into iMessage so that you can do all the cool little features, but as you are finding out, SMS is the only real route for most other ecosystems. I think this is why the rise of or why it's so popular to have WhatsApp or Kik or any of
Right.
these other messaging services. Those are hugely popular in Android, are they not? Like, do you think that may be a reason that it doesn't matter if you just use a separate messaging app?
No, it really doesn't matter if you do use a separate messaging app. But these are things that you've just got to be very careful of. And I'll tell you the truth, if you're into a messaging app and you're texting and you do this every day, it doesn't say on there this is iMessage or this is Samsung Message or this is AT&T. It doesn't tell you where you're actually putting this information.
Right.
And so you might be using this all the time and not even know where your information is going.
The only difference I've ever
Crazy.
found, yeah, the only difference I ever found was iMessage is blue and text message is green for the iPhone. So if your messages are in blue,
Okay.
that's iMessage. If they're in green, text message.
But
That's about it. And there's
yeah.
not but you're right. And I never considered that iMessage would share a completely different set of data than just regular text messaging. So okay, so transferring over, they hooked it up to their machine. You transferred the phones. So
Right. Well, we didn't even have to hook it up to the machine because my pictures and everything were in Google.
mhm,
So that actually makes it easier if you're going in this direction anyway.
I see.
Yeah, so all my Google contacts were all there, all my pictures, which I use Google Photos, that was all there. Um, I think we had to play with a few other things, but nothing horrendous. It's just the idea that you're kind of reinventing your phone when you get it.
Right.
You're redoing apps and you're doing things that you don't even think about. I have not found a ringtone that I like yet because my ringtone went away with my Apple phone.
That yeah.
Um,
So
I
so
loved I
go
loved
ahead.
the Apple the way when I got a text it kind of tweeted at you,
Hmm?
and I can't find a little tweet sound.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say I can't find. I haven't tried yet, but I miss my tweet sound. So there are things that if you change from one to the other, you're going to miss certain things, but you're gaining other things.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, part of what Android and a lot of Android users like is the ability that really anything that there is within Apple, and again, getting back to the apps and some of those things, you can customize your Android because it's much more open system to essentially to what it wants. So I mean, it sounds like you're having a few transition problems, but that doesn't mean that you're stuck with them forever. It's probably more of a learning curve kind of thing
Exactly.
going with this.
Exactly. A learning curve and realizing that it's going to take a little bit of time to get through all these things because you can't do it all at once. And people ask me all the time, is an iPhone easier than an Android or is an Android easier than an iPhone? Well, not really. At beginning it was, but at this point in time, they are both fairly easy to use. It's a question of learning curve. It's a question of figuring out how to do things. So when you go from a PC to a Mac or from an iPhone to an Android, you're going to have to figure out how to do some things that you knew how to do on the Apple, but you don't know how to do on the Android. So it's not huge, but there is definitely a learning curve. So you have to allow yourself some time, I think, to do all that. I have not yet done it all.
Right. And we've talked about a number of connected devices here on the show before with you. You have quite a bit of automatic lights and of course digital assistants. How has changing from one phone to another does it all mesh seamlessly again, or is it still hard to like talk to your Google or Alexa or something like that?
Because Android and iPhone have been around for a while now, and so have Alexa and Google, as far as Google Home, I mean. Um, it's been, oh, now my Alexa is answering
Oh,
me
sorry.
because I mentioned her name. I can't do that again.
Right.
So basically,
Echo. Right.
as far as the iPhones go, it's all great as far as I mean iPhones and the Android phones is great as far as the home devices. Both of them have apps that are free and you just put the apps on the phone, and whether it's iPhone or Android, they work similarly. There's a little few differences, but not too much. I didn't find anything that I couldn't do on the Samsung phone that I could do on the iPhone as far as setting up the Echo or setting up Google Home.
I gotcha. So all that plays nice. One thing I did want to mention, this was a story, sometime earlier this week, I think, or last week, that Apple recently dipped into its mountains of cash and it was able to purchase Shazam. And folks, if you don't remember Shazam, it was popular a couple years ago. Still is pretty popular, surprisingly. And it identified songs for you. All you had to do was hold up Shazam and it would identify the song. Apple bought them, and it now works with Siri. And Siri, obviously now has the capability to recognize songs, things like that. My point is, Apple has a decent, albeit needs work, voice assistant. I've heard of Bixby. I've heard it didn't really work with English speakers very well. Great with Japanese speakers, but how is the digital assistant Bixby? Because they do list it as a feature on their site.
Yes, and there is the Note 8 has a Bixby button. So it's a dedicated button that you can press for Bixby on the side of the phone. And I find it very interesting because basically the iPhone had some things with Siri, but Siri, be honest with you, has gotten kind of old
Mm-hmm.
compared to the Amazon Lexi. I'll call her Lexi so she won't turn on here.
All right.
Um, yeah, compared to that one or to the Google Home Assistant, Siri just hasn't been that good at answering questions or doing things. So I guess Apple is making her better
They're working
as
on
we
it.
speak. No, they're
Yeah.
working on it, no doubt about that. They're definitely working on it. But Bixby is interesting in that it's not the same as a voice assistant, or the ones that we're used to having, like Lexi or Google Assistant. It is different, and it performs a lot more functions on the phone. So you can say, "Hey Bixby, take a picture," and it will open the camera and take a picture,
Hmm.
which Siri can't do, other voice assistants can't do. So you can control a lot of things on your phone. You can say, "Bring up this, uh, give me my notepad," or whatever, and Bixby will do it. Now, I have to be honest with you, I have not investigated all the things that Bixby can do yet. Because when I went to the Samsung website and got up information on Bixby, there were pages and pages of what Bixby can do. So it's going to be very interesting to get into that. And that's the fun of a new phone.
Yeah.
Actually, trying new things in Bixby is totally new.
Right. Yep. And folks, the music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Sandy Berger, and we're going to wrap up our conversation concerning Android and switching from iPhone. Yep. And so, yeah, we'll be right back with Sandy Berger, and we'll talk more about, well, next month, the largest electronics show of the year. We're going to talk about what we expect to see out there coming up. Everyone, stay tuned. Computer America.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here, and we are talking with the one, the only, Sandy Berger. And again, if you find any of this interesting, she, of course, has a lot of her writings up at CompuKiss.com, link at Computer America. And so, Sandy, before the break, we were talking about, learning some of these new features. You mentioned earlier that the stylus comes in handy for phone. I mean, this phone... I'm not sure of the exact dimensions compared to an iPhone, but you did mention it was taller, and that's something that they advertise. Does that come in handy when you're viewing? I'm not really sure what kind of content you view, but they're promising more immersive experiences when it comes to things like watching videos and taking pictures. They're just naturally wider than iPhone. Have you noticed any kind of difference just with the physical attributes of the phone?
Yes, it's almost an inch taller than the iPhone X and the iPhone 8. Um, and I think that makes a big difference in the amount of things you see on the screen and also what you can do with the screen. For instance, the beautiful thing, one thing that I've been finding I use a lot is called, I think it's called Edge, the
Mm-hmm.
Samsung Edge. Okay. And what you do is you swipe from the right side of the phone to the left, and the edge will come up. Well, you set your edge pages so you can have people, apps, reminders, tasks, weather. There's probably at least 10 different edges that you can put on. And basically, when you swipe that, say you get your apps up and you can have 2 rows of apps, you can have 2 rows of people. So the people you call often or text often, you put in the people app and you just go ahead and slide your finger across and you see those people and you don't have to look up their name. You don't have to call their name out. You just do a little tap and suddenly you're calling them or texting them. I think it's really cool. The other thing that's extremely cool on this phone, because you have a bigger screen, you can do 2 apps at the same time. So they're called app pairs. And you can set up the apps so you can have the weather on the bottom and your messages on the top, or however you want to set it up. And there is enough space to actually see all that, especially because it's taller.
I gotcha.
So you've got, 2 things that are both readable and both have enough space to be able to work with them. And these are just a few of the things that when I started looking into which phone I wanted to buy, these things, the Bixby was a big thing. The app pair, the People Edge, all these things added to the reason that I bought the phone. Um, it also has Bluetooth 5, and I don't know if I assume the iPhone X has Bluetooth 5, but I'm not positive. Bluetooth 5 definitely gives you noticeable increase in the span that you can walk away from a Bluetooth
Just
device.
just Googled it. iPhone 8 and 10 do indeed have Bluetooth 5, but it's only for the later versions of iPhone. So very,
Right,
very cool.
exactly. But that's a really cool thing. I mean, Samsung Pay. If you were at CES last year, the year before, you saw Samsung Pay every place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is now every place. So you can pay more places with Samsung Pay than you can with Apple Pay. Although Apple Pay is catching up, I think, quite quickly, um, and they're doing very well on that. There's still that. Um, the other thing that this phone has is the dual cameras that are on the iPhones as well, or some of the iPhones. But both cameras have optical stabilization, which I really like because I have a little bit of a shaky hand when taking pictures, and that really helps me get some better photographs than I would otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And that was, just like the iPhone 10, they dedicated a lot of, well, when they weren't dedicating time to the fact that you can make yourself look like an emoji cat, they were dedicating that the iPhone 10 took great pictures. But a lot of people, when they compared it to, the Samsung phone and, the Note, yeah, it was pretty much on par. I mean, both phones take amazing photos, although I think it was the Samsung one, the Note, that took it better in dark lighting.
Definitely, and that I can attest to because I've tried that out. In dark, low light instances, the Galaxy Note 8 is superior without a doubt. In comparing photographs that were taken with the iPhone 7, which is maybe not a fair comparison, but not bad, and the Note 8, um, the iPhone 7 seems to put a slightly nicer look on people, and the Galaxy seems to put a nicer look on landscapes and objects,
Mm.
um, which is just very, very vaguely different. But either one, I think, is excellent as far as the cameras go.
Right. No. And by the way, we're just checking out the website. Did you get any of the accessories because they are kind of advertising or claiming? Let's see, there's Samsung Dex, and I'm sure we're going to talk slightly about the VR, the Gear VR, but the Samsung Dex, it lets you essentially dock your Samsung phone and let it take over a computer. I assume.
Yes, it does, and I do not have that. I
Mm.
did see a demo on it, and hope to see some more demos on that when we get to CES because I'm sure it'll be there. Um, from what I saw, it works very, very well. I don't particularly have a need for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got my computer here, I've got my phone here, but I don't normally do things on the phone that I want to walk in and transfer to the computer, which is the reason for getting that. I did buy a fast charging wireless charger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these new iPhones are the first ones to have wireless charging, but because Samsung has had it for a few years, they are pretty far ahead of Apple. And I think Apple will come out with their own charger probably in the next 6 months that'll be a bit faster than what you can get now. They both use the QI charging technique, but Samsung has fast charging, and it really does very well. I think. Let's see if I can find my notes on that. I charged up a phone to from 0 to 90% in about an hour,
That's not bad. It's not
which
bad for
is
wireless
really
charging.
which
Yeah.
is really good. Yeah, and they have Samsung this year has like three of these fast wireless chargers. Now you can't just buy a charger; you have to buy the fast charger,
Right.
and there is a difference there. So just get the right one.
Right, but and that's something that I think a lot of people should really consider is that when you do wireless charging, you do need those special docks, and it may not seem like a big thing, but if you are used to charging your phone at your office and at home, then you would need essentially two charging stations or carry one around with you, which is cumbersome.
Well,
So
you don't have to do wireless charging. You can do regular
right,
charging as
right,
as well.
right.
You know,
I'm just saying that it's not like
if you want it. Yeah.
you just like rub it against an outlet and it charges. No, you need these special adapters. But you're right. You can totally plug them into a computer and they charge. Just like that, just like any other phone. But definitely great to see. The last thing we're going to talk about, with this thing would be, well, one of the last things. Because iPhone comes with cases galore and all that good stuff. Uh, it- you know, I'm sure you had plenty of easy time finding a good case for this, screen protectors, blah blah blah.
Oh yeah. AT&T had a million, Best Buy's got a million, and Amazon has even more. Um, all right, a million was an exaggeration, but they do have a lot of cases. I have not chosen a case for mine. Now, my husband got a case from AT&T. He's very happy with it. It's just a protective case for the in case he drops it,
Hmm.
basically. Because the things are waterproof and dustproof, so you don't have to worry about that. Um, but I don't know what kind of a case I want for mine, so I'm still deciding that.
Right. Well, definitely get one soon because, as you said, these things are $1,000 a piece, and dropping one
Right.
in even the smallest chip just breaks your heart. So, yep, definitely recommend getting one of those as well as all of our listeners. So,
Be-
closing notes
before
about
we move on,
yeah,
I do have to say that the one thing that the iPhone X has the facial recognition,
right.
okay, which they call Face ID, and it's supposed to be wonderful. But this phone actually has an iris scan, a fingerprint scan, face recognition, a pattern, a scan, and a password or a PIN.
There's a lot
So
of options.
there's six different ways to get into the phone. The only thing about it is the fingerprint scanner is on the back of the phone, and I had that on an LG phone one time. It's a little difficult to get used to. It's not hard to use, just slightly difficult to get used to. I have not used the iris scan yet. That's something else that I can investigate on this phone.
Mhm.
But I like the idea that you can still use the fingerprint, which you can't do on the iPhone X. The iPhone X is a face recognition only. I think it has a pin too. Um, but for the face recognition, you have to have a straight on your face. And I kind of actually like the fingerprint scan better.
Right. Yeah. And one last point that I wanted to make was that this is something I was actually considering because I was looking into getting a Chromebook for my mom, and she currently just has a Windows PC but uses iTunes for all of her music. And again, kind of relevant because iTunes, iOS, and switching to Android. And I was going to switch her over to Google Play. Luckily, she has under 5,000 songs. I think most people do. 5,000 songs is a lot of songs. But if you do, and I'm not sure if you did this or if you keep, music in your iTunes. You said that you had an iPad, so it really didn't matter. But um, I believe that there's a feature with Google, the Google Play Store, that you just set up an account and you essentially sync it with iTunes, and it lets you bring over up to 5,000 songs. So, if you're on an Android phone but you have iTunes, you can get all your music over there. Have you tried that, or is it
I
still
not
locked
only
up?
have tried that, but I have been using it for quite a while because Google Play plays on the Google Home
It's true.
devices.
True.
So that's the easiest way for me to get my music in. Of course, I can pay a couple bucks a month for Spotify or for these other things that would have probably all the music I want. But I kind of like to have my albums and my music, and so I did exactly what you said. I went into Google Play, set it up to transfer everything over from iTunes to Google Play. And not only does it transfer what you have, but it will transfer things if you continue to put things into iTunes,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably one of the easiest ways to put your CDs in. It'll transfer it over to Google Play automatically.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that feature works seamlessly, and it's actually wonderful. And at first, Google Home could not play my music unless I put it in a playlist.
Hmm.
Just a quirk. But recently, Google Home has learned how to. When I say play this and this album, which is my album, it knows that I have that in my Google Play. And like you said, you can put in. I think it's more than 5,000
I think
songs
it's
actually.
5,000, and then but I'm sure that if you had like 15, 20,000, if you're some kind of weirdo, you would pay like $2 and you could get all. It would not be expensive, is my point.
Right. And actually, Amazon, because I have the same situation with my Echoes, Amazon only lets you put in 250 songs. So Google
Wow.
Play is extremely generous.
And by the way, I just checked out 20,000. You're right, it was way more. 20,000, not 5,000, and that should
Okay.
cover like everyone. So not bad.
Yeah, no problem. And I like Google Play Music. I've been using it for a while, and it's not let me down yet. So
Right. Yeah. Well, it was just something that I wanted to mention because if we're mentioning, kind of swapping ecosystems, certainly that is, a large part in a lot of people's is music. So,
right.
yeah. And I'm trying to think of any other, you mentioned contacts. There's some problem there. Music's okay. Documents and data should be fine. Apps, new. You have to get new ones. It seems like, all in all, would you say that this is prohibitive, or is this just something you just kind of have to work with for a bit?
Well, you have to work with it for a bit, but you can get up and running very quickly. I mean, transferring over your contacts and stuff like that just goes very, very quickly. You can put on Gmail if you want to have. You can put on Google Contacts if you want to have that. And this phone runs Android 7.1.1. It is not yet been upgraded to Android 8. So that's the only thing that I was kind of thinking I'd like to have Android 8, but um, it'll take me a while to get used to this, so I can get used to this first and then move up to 8 when they're ready to make that move.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, just real quick about that, because I believe that was called Oreo, and
That's
that
right.
was released recently. Is that something that your carrier has to push to you, or is that something that an individual can opt into whenever they feel?
I think the carrier has to push it to you.
Okay. All right. So that makes
Or
sense.
somebody has to, in other words, they are not ready to do Oreo on this phone yet. No
Right.
matter where you get it from, it's not really, they're not really pushing it out yet.
Right. Well, that's one thing about iOS that people may not be used to. Where with iPhone, if you aren't up to date on the latest, then they will send you notification after notification telling you to do so. If you have an iOS device, they make sure it works unless it's just too old and it just won't. Whereas Android, I believe there's still X amount running on 5.0 and 6 and 7 and 8.0. There's some fragmentation in operating systems. So but nothing too bad. Nothing too bad.
No, really, there used to be in Android, there used to be a terrible wait time until your Android new systems were pushed out to you. But it's getting better and better. So I think Samsung is getting better and better. And Apple, it's going to be very interesting now they've got Johnny Ives back doing design again. And he's been the guy who's come up with some fabulous designs. So I'm watching that too. So it'll be very interesting. Might be next year I try go back to the iPhone. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course you can tell us how it is going from one to the other again.
From one to the other.
But Johnny Ives, like, definitely he makes some very interesting things. But uh, as others have mentioned, his design style is simply, all right, what is there? All right, take that out. Like Johnny Ives is very much a minimalist. So home button, you're on notice because Johnny Ives is back. That's all I can say. But
Yes, simplicity,
yeah.
simplicity. And that has actually served them well. It really has. It's taken some people a long time to get used to the idea that you can swipe this way, you can swipe that way, you can, you've got to actually play with the things before you figure it out.
Right. Yeah, and simple. Like this is and we're going on a tangent here for a second, but we're going to talk about CES here in our last 10 minutes. But I will say that one thing that always freaks me out about my iPhone, and it is simplicity, because the home button. I have an iPhone 7. The home button. It's not a real physical button. It's like an indentation, and it has the haptic feedback. So it has like a little uh, motor or like a little thing that will give a little bump, a little shake every time it registers an input. And whenever my iPhone is off, I think that my button is broken because it gives zero feedback. It's just a little indent in the glass. So like, but when you turn it on, it feels so much like you're actually pressing something when it's just that
Right.
little haptic feedback giving it. And again, it just shows that Apple was thinking about simplicity when they took out the actual button and it's just a little motor. So, I mean, but again, that's all that for later. So, but Sandy, like I mentioned, want to move from Samsung to CES because this is something that is going to interfere with our interview next month. You're going to be out at CES. Looking forward to seeing what you come out from that with the experiences, gadgets, and swag. But yeah, this is, for anyone out there, the largest consumer electronics show. Well, CES, Consumer Electronics Show. It's the largest one in North America, really by a lot. And what you see at CES is what consumers are going to be seeing probably in 2 or 3 years. It's
Sometimes faster.
sometimes faster.
Yeah, it used to be always 2 or 3 years, but now things are moving so quickly. I mean, I think everything has accelerated to a speed that I think some of these things we'll go see at CES, and we'll see them on the market in a couple months after that. We'll
Right,
see.
yeah, yeah. So I thought it would be fun to talk about what we expect, what we're excited about, because I remember when we did this like last year, there's always an overarching theme, something that everyone is excited about, something that everyone is trying to get into. And, I think, when you and I met up at CES a couple years ago, that year was like the year of sensors. Everyone and everything had an air quality sensor, had a temperature sensor. Like sensors were all the rage. The
Right.
year after that was like the Internet of Things, the connected home. So I thought this year we'd talk about trends that we're already starting to see. And yeah, and I'll let you decide. If you want to pick one, I'll pick one, and we'll go back and forth what we're excited about.
Well, I'm, as you know, excited about smart homes and about voice assistants. Since I have both the Amazon Echo and the Google Home, I want to see where that's going. And when Apple actually comes out with their device, which was supposed to be here before Christmas. Now Apple doesn't display at CES, but they'll be all the rumors will be there, and we'll figure out what's going on with smart homes. They are getting smarter and smarter. Things are being built into other items. So it's not just a standalone Google Home, but you can have any sort of speaker that will have Alexa built in or will have Google Assistant built in. And that's what's coming. It's already washers and dryers and all that. But I'm real curious to see what new things they come up with and what new ideas they have to turn the voice assistants loose.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that and I can't mention names because all these emails, unless they say otherwise, I probably shouldn't talk about them. But I will say that I've been getting a lot of emails pertaining to like not even like individual like, oh hey, we have a thermostat or we have lighting, but I'm getting a lot of different companies that are trying to show off the all-encompassing promise of a smart home where they partnered with 15 different companies. I saw one at Sands, the Sands Expo. They're going to have a whole experience. You walk through a house and see how everything is connected. That is something I'm definitely picking up on. And, your wish is going to come true. I feel that that everything is going to start working together now. And we're going to start seeing companies that are going to work as an intermediary to make sure everything talks to each other. That's what we're going to see this year, is that not just individual products, like you said, but everything is going to start communicating with each other. And that's exciting.
Yeah, I think you're right. I the idea of having a home there just kind of reminded me that, oh, must have been 6, maybe 7 years ago. Dell had a home, and they were taking limos of press people out there, and you could go through the whole home.
Hmm.
And for what we had 7 years ago, it's archaic today. So if some company does something like that, be it Dell or somebody else, where they're controlling all these devices and everything, it should be fascinating. I'd love to see somebody do that.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So, yeah, and whole home, that's definitely going to be a huge part. And it's going to be surprising if the large companies don't have, in some way, touch on that if they aren't there exclusively to present connected homes. So that's one. One that I'm, and maybe it's just that they're, kind of getting a kickstart on the PR before anyone else. Of course, we're going to see what, let's see. just got invited to Samsung and Sony's press conference, so they're going to be exhibiting, and you can expect all the greatness from televisions and what have you. But let's see, AR and VR. And while we've definitely heard of those are kind of like last year or the year before. I will say that this year I'm seeing a lot more companies that are exclusively creating content for AR and VR. And, oddly enough, more specifically for augmented reality, because, you just got a Samsung phone. Congratulations. You can now do VR with the Samsung Gear VR. But I don't know if it's hit the tipping point or they expect it to, but companies are really excited about AR exercising activities or VR, kind of whole experiences. There's going to be a lot of AR and VR. Do you think that's, kind of warranted, or is that still something they're trying to push but hasn't caught on yet?
I think they're still trying to push it. Hasn't quite caught on yet, but it's almost there. The VR that I've seen has been phenomenal up to this point. The computer to run it and this and that has been so expensive. It's been above the mainstream. Now the prices are coming down. They're coming out with new stuff, and I think this is going to be a big year for VR, even a bigger year for AR. I think augmented reality, I mean, the iPhone X, that's one thing that they say it is ready for augmented reality, which I didn't see anything on Samsung about that. But it'll be interesting to see, as you're talking about, what content comes out for the augmented reality. And I think health is a big area besides fitness, sports, and health for augmented reality is going to be very, very big. Where um, I don't even know what to expect, but I'm expecting to be excited about it, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, games are always fun, but you mentioned health. That's going to be huge, 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 huge. Really can't understate how big telecommunication, as they're calling it, is going to be in our everyday lives, because it saves a lot of money in an industry that is, really starting to see razor thin margins. So,
Right.
medicine, it's certainly going to be a thing. And I'll, leave us off here with like 2 more minutes. Connected home, connected home, connected cities, because as exciting as your individual home being connected could be, you mentioned that you were excited about connected cities, which is kind of like the idea of a connected home blown up into, just thousands upon thousands of people, and it all just working together.
Right. And you talked earlier about 2 years ago how sensors was the big thing at CES, and there were sensors everywhere. Well, now those sensors have been combined with mesh networking.
Right.
And mesh networking allows you to put little nodes everywhere and little sensors everywhere and to blanket an entire city or a park or whatever with various things that they can do. They can tell you when it's going to rain, and they can. It's unbelievable, and I think that um, we should be seeing some of that at CES this year because, like I said, mesh networks have become very, very big. Have one in my home. Absolutely love it. Advise anybody who's upgrading their network to go with a mesh network, um, and then you'll see it going
Yeah.
outside the home.
Right, yeah, it's that on top of machine learning, which is going to turn all the sensors and all the data into reducing traffic, into
Right.
just making everything better. So, yep, a lot of exciting stuff. Can't wait to see it again next month. Sandy, you're going to be traveling, obviously, to CES. Looking forward to talking with you there if we happen to catch up with you. But in the meantime, you'll be back in February, absolutely. And everyone, music means we're just about done. So, Sandy, people want to find out more, where can they go?
Come to visit me at compukiss.com. That's COMPUKISS.com. I'm revamping some things on the website. You'll see changes fairly shortly. So come and visit. We have new information all the time, and love to hear from you.
All right, there you go. And of course, we have a link to that at computeramerica.com with the show notes right there. So, Sandy, until next time, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and yeah, catch you then.
Same to you. Bye
All right,
bye.
All right, and everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we have on with us Adigy. So, yep, we'll see what they do. Looks like some kind of Mac management, as in for iOS. Anyways, should be a lot of fun. Tune in tomorrow, Computer America, and of course, more articles, news, things like that. So, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.